Alrighty, guys, as you know, the biggest decision of our lives is coming up, and it is going to be made in this November. The greatest, most majorest moment in our history as citizens of a democracy is nearly upon us. And of course, that is the outcome of the 2024 Lump Off contest. Oh, ho, 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 ho. No, but actually, Maximilian Pegasus F. Scotts Fitzgerald is hosting a Lump Off creation contest on his Patreon, and I am going to make an entry. In the lump unit entry, there are a couple of examples listed of things that could be lumps. So to cover my bases, I decided I would make 2 lumps. One is going to be a root monster, for which I'm going to be using this really neat Wendigo miniature, and the other example is a mutated knight, so I decided I'm going to use this Centaur proxy. Now I'm just adding a little bit of cork board to add a little bit of depth to the base, give me a little more to play off of for decorating it, and give the lumps a little extra height to make them a little touch more menacing. Okay, stick them on their bases. Then I prepped a second knight body to make the centaur into a double-decker, and I threw a horse onto the Wendigo base as a reference to the fact that horses exist. Here's a plastic card pokey bit for the axe. Now I am making some medals to give these lumps the recognition they deserve for their prowess on the battlefield. And making these medals was twice as painful as placing those rivets on the tanks. So if I compared the whole rivet thing to the Scourge of Jesus, then if my Bible math is correct, then making these medals and placing them was the equivalent of suffering 78 lashes. Next lump I make, I am most definitely not going to handcraft these medals from paper and sprue bits. I'm gonna hunker down, I'm gonna learn Blender, I'm gonna 3D print some medals. Speaking of which, I did actually try to learn Blender in the past. You know, I did the whole opened up Blender, got the donut tutorial on the second monitor, and I just jumped in and pretty quickly gave up. But if anyone out there does know how to use Blender, I'll trade you a lesson in how to use green stuff if you give me a Blender lesson. Anyway, back to the super glue and the bits, etc., etc. I glued a thing to another thing, ad infinitum minus infinity plus like 6-ish hours. Alright, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk lumps. So what role do they fill? Well, what I'm about to say is gonna come across a bit, oh, mamma mia, if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. But lumps are basically, they are melee artillery. That is to say, they serve the same function as cannons, stump guns, in that they are both armor-piercing. But here's the difference. Cannons cannot move, but they can shoot something every turn. But it's always gotta be the closest enemy that they're shooting at. Whereas lumps, they can move and be positioned deliberately to target enemy armor, which on the one hand makes them a lot better at their job as being an anti-elite unit, but they're always going to take at least a turn or two moving to get to their target, which again, the game is only 4 turns long, so that could be like half the game right there, during which time while they're moving, they might just get shot to death because they don't have any ranged weapons themselves. Fortunately, they are quite tanky in the sense that they have a lot of armor, not in the pro-Stalin way. Tar pit infantry to tie up these heavy hitters, whereas before they were just kind of all-purpose general units. But I'm a big fan of the fact that they have like a solid place now, and they're more sort of incentivized to take a few of them. And I like seeing lots of fodder on the table. I feel like it goes a long way towards making the game feel kind of grounded in that Napoleonic basis. Then again, all of this is entirely theoretical. I could be 100% wrong in practice. Maybe lumps just shred through infantry and then they just get absolutely mollywopped by scab tanks. I'm gonna have to definitely play some games with them before I actually figure that out. Alright, we've got a few tufts to glue on here. Now this is gonna add some texture and it's gonna serve some double duty. Makes the whole 3D nature of the model more apparent, and it gives everything a more rooty, organic vibe. And texture is super easy to paint and adds a level of visual depth that is otherwise really difficult to achieve. But pretty much that's like the whole goal of what we're trying to do here with these minis. You know, the more depth you add, the more it looks like it's actually there. And you can shortcut your way to depth by just making stuff overlap. Otherwise, you have to achieve it with like high contrast values. That is to say, showing the difference between like the lightest, brightest, and then the darkest dark. And you have to use your paints and colors to do that. Which, in order to make that look natural and real, you have to have like a really good understanding of light, or at least specifically how it looks when it bounces off of stuff, which is super difficult to recreate. So just glue more crap to your minis and let real life light do all the heavy lifting. So continues my jihad, my kampf, my struggle, whatever you want to call it, my eternal war against my ability to sculpt stuff. You know, I watched the Mr. Beast of Warhammer. He made an entire army of giants out of green stuff. I watched his whole video, and I've succumbed to commodity fetishism. I bought the exact same Tamiya model epoxy he used after he told me that it was a magic bullet and it would instantly make me good at sculpting, and I have been lied to. So I spent an hour trying to make a bicorn for my Wendigo, and it just failed miserably every time. I was incapable of hitting that sweet spot where the putty wasn't so soft, it just like melted together. And then by the time it started to get rigid, I panicked and I bailed, and I just smushed it together into a mushroom cap and called that good enough, which I definitely think was my problem. As soon as it gets rigid, that's when I feel like I can actually start working with it, which I'll take into consideration in the future. I have to have that willingness to maybe let it set out too long and possibly risk ruining it. Just accept that I'm just gonna suffer some casualties in the process of learning how to use green stuff. That having been said, if anyone is actually good with green stuff and knows how to use it and can give me a lesson, guess what? I can teach you how to use Blender in return. Now that's what they call a forward contract in the industry. Or maybe not. My understanding of finance is not great. It's based entirely off of what I learned in Dwarf Fortress. But I digress. Okay, so I cut some thin strips of paper to use as some paper mache to add some stringiness to the mushroom's stalk. And many, many moons ago, I cut the feathers off of my Imperial Noble Blood Bowl team so that I could use them for my regular human Blood Bowl team. And these feathers are such an amazing bit. They are perfect for instantly snobifying any turnip model. Now, there is a single product in the entire world that is actually worthy of being fetishized, because it is perfect and can do no wrong, which normally you might say, ooh, Joe, are you influenced by some kind of Halo-y bias or something towards this? Which is actually not the case, because I can objectively say that this is the only substance that has ever achieved its platonic ideal form, and that is the Winsor & Newton Galleria Acrylic Sand Texture Gel, which I will liberally asperge my lumps with. Alright, let's lay down a quick little Zen EP. That's a Zenithal Prime for you cats not in the know. Alright, you know the drill here. Basic strategy, we're gonna speed paint 2.0 all over these lads, give them a quick little highlight, then a good old-fashioned grab them by the base and dip them in the river of oil wash. So when I finished making these models, some ineffable alien spirit delivered a scroll of knowledge directly to my hippocampus. So I'm going to try my best to translate that into human language and then communicate that idea with you guys. So the aliens in my brain, they told me that the first one's name is Wendy the Dingo, and her whole thing is that she's basically like a Bigfoot. No one believes that she's real. No one's ever seen her before. There's only stories of like a few crazy fodder that go out into the root forest at night and they make obscene mating calls in an attempt to lure her out. And then those fodder never return. Ooh. And I know what you might be thinking. Well, if that's the case, how does she show up on the battlefield and kill a bunch of people and running around like slaughtering troops and stuff? How does no one believe that she exists if that's also the case? Well, that's because she like exerts this bubble of influence that affects people's consensus of reality, causing them to stop believing in her whenever she's out of sight. Yeah, she's basically a marauder from Mage the Ascension. And the real lump was the lump in your brain the whole time. And she also likes to eat people's babies, and then no one believes them, and then they just think that they're a bad root mother. And then the second guy, his name is Sir Gash-a-Lot, because he's been gashed by swords a lot, and he also gashes people with his axe. He's basically just like the tree sentinel. He like waits outside of root villages for up-and-coming snobs to go on their Top's journey to form a cult, and he basically just spawn camps them. He's also got like a Keynesian economic theory regarding the market of royalty in the land of Sist. He believes that relying on the natural birth rate of snobs will inevitably lead to their extinction. So he has given himself the divine right to imbue non-gentry with honorifics and titles and make them into noblemen, into snobs. He does this as a means to inject lifeblood into the existence of the upper class. And then immediately after naming one of these peasants a snob, he will then test their worthiness in single combat, and he just always kills the unfortunate poor sod. And the knight above his head, his double-decker knight, is his second, as is proper dueling etiquette. Everyone always needs a second, and he always demands that his opponent has a second ready. For which cases, when his opponent doesn't have one, he has this small root chicken that he keeps on the end of his lance that he will offer to his opponent as a second. Thus concludes Joe's lore corner. So when it comes to Sir Gash-a-Lot's banner, now originally this was going to be the first project where I decided, screw freehanding banners, I'm just going to print stuff out and paint over it. But then I decided, well, if I'm going to enter this guy into a contest, it seems like it'd be pretty disingenuous to not just freehand the banner. That having been said, I didn't make this Wendigo model, I just found it on the internet and just printed it out. So, who's to say? Something Sorieties paradox. When does this model go from being someone else's model to my model? And I'm gonna say it was the moment that I put epaulets on the Wendigo. Now these guys are ready to be based. Based? Based on what? Alright, I'm using everything I learned. We got twigs on here. We got mud made from spackle. We got slightly tinted blue UV resin. We got wet spots made with gloss varnish. And then we got a little bit of dry mud made with some pigment powder. And the piece de resistance. And we got the little autumn leaves. And with that, I declare these lumps good enough.
Lump sat alone in a boggy marsh.
Now here comes the hard part. I have to actually choose one of these guys to be the lump that I enter into the lump off. Now I kind of prefer the silhouette and the composition of Wendy the Dingo, but Sir Gash-a-Lot I kind of feel like is better representative of what it means to be a lump. So, what do you guys think? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? My daddy was a fodder, and I'm a fodder's son. And I'll be with the onion cult till every battle's won. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Now, okay, looking back at the pictures, I think I might actually go back and add a few more touch-ups. You know, when I was painting them originally, I was just finishing them for the sake of finishing the project. But now, actually having spent a few days sitting back and editing, I've regained my patience, and I think I actually want to fix them. So I think, like, the banner could probably use a few more layers of glazing just to smooth everything out a bit, and I also think I want to add some curvy lines, those wavy lines, that design onto the Tufts bicorn. I'm also thinking I'm going to Dremel a hole into the horse on the Wendy the Dingo's base and add some like viscera spilling out. Maybe freehand some simple designs like stars and crosses onto the metals. I don't know. Anything else you guys think I should add? Overall, pretty happy. I certainly learned a lot of lessons here. On the one hand, this is like the first time I deliberately tried to go out of my way to paint something to look good on display. But on the other hand, I basically just did slap chop plus, which in the grand scheme of try-hard painting is pretty much on the absolute most basic side of the spectrum you can absolutely go. Also, the 2024 Golden Demons wrapped up, and I made the mistake of looking at those models, and oh my god, they are so unattainably hyper perfect, it makes me want to give up. But you know, I'm still excited for whatever the next contest is. I think I actually want to give the try-hard painting method a shot, the whole 1,000 layers of glazes. I think next step in the process, though, I have to figure out how to actually paint non-metallic metal, which I've tried a couple of times, but I've never gotten it to actually look good. So that's the plan. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
She's in my head. She's not, she might be dead.